Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Anonymous Throwdown Podcast. We truly have so much to discuss today, so much news since the last episode that we did. All kinds of shakeups at Warner Brothers Games, some good news, really one piece of good news, and then a couple of pieces of bad news. The primary piece of good news is that reports have emerged that Rocksteady is going to be making a Batman game. We don't know for sure that it's an Arkham game, but one could assume it more than likely is an Arkham game. But nonetheless, they are making a Batman game. That comes after CEO David Zaslav said that they're going to be focusing all of their efforts going forward in the next 10 years on Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and Batman. Notably, though, he did exclude DC from that. And so in that vein, they have canceled the Wonder Woman game. Not only that, they fired the entire studio that is Monolith Games and got rid of everybody there. WB Games Montreal is confirmed to be pitching a Game of Thrones video game. So again, David Zaslav wants to make Game of Thrones games, Harry Potter and Batman, and we've not heard anything about Flash or Superman or anything like that. So the pendulum has kind of swung all the way back to 2009, where, yes, we're going to be getting Batman games, but kind of only Batman. So, of course, Marcel and Jake are here as they always are, and I want to hear their thoughts. Marcel, you want to start?
Okay, well, first of all, we all know that WB is entirely incompetent. It's as clear as day now. Like, this is just, it's bonkers. The Wonder Woman game is the one thing that I'm kind of like most surprised about that they didn't actually get out. The Batman game, I'm happy about. I'm actually happy that they're making another Batman game. That'd be really cool if Rocksteady made another Batman game. But with the team that they have now, with what's going on, WB's Montreal is making a Game of Thrones game. I don't know what the hell is going on over there. It sounds like chaos. It sounds like a lot of chaos. And then you have Marvel over here. Marvel Rivals just came out for them. They're already banking on that. They already basically made probably millions of dollars off of that game alone. They got the Black Panther and Captain America game coming out potentially at the end of December or whatever. What's coming out in December. Marvel's knocking out a park, and then you got DC over here who can't even come out with a competent game. They got Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights like as their last couple of games that came out, and they can't even make a Wonder Woman game. It's kind of pathetic, but I guess we're just gonna get our Batman games for the rest of the generation of the PS5 and the Xbox One and whatnot. We're just gonna get Batman games for the end of time. We're not gonna get any Superman games or Flash games. What do you think about that, Jake? You think that we're just gonna get Batman games for the rest of history from WB?
I mean, I think that's maybe what we'll get if they can come out with another one. I was talking to Kobe a little bit before we started recording about how I'm concerned that this new Batman game could be another decade out because they might, get 4 years into production and then reboot it and then switch directors. And then David Zaslav decides we should put loot boxes in the game. And then, it's 2037 and we still don't have it out yet. Like, who knows? I seriously think there should be a sitcom about the executives at Warner Brothers because the decisions are just mind-boggling. Even the decision to shut down Monolith, it's one of those very short-sighted, cost-cutting maneuvers that sure will look a little better for this year's revenue, but in the future, that's a studio that could generate a lot of profit for them that's gone. I mean, worst case scenario, say they only want to make Batman games. Why not transition Monolith into, being the B team for Rocksteady and working on Arkham games and staggering releases? We could be getting an Arkham game every 2 years if they did it that way. But instead, they're really scaling down not only the studios that they have, but also like the IPs that they're willing to work with. Game of Thrones is a really interesting one to me. I actually tweeted recently that, Game of Thrones doesn't seem to have the same cultural impact right now that it did 10 years ago. So I think that's an interesting one to bank so much on. It's obviously a huge IP. I think it will do well, but will it be another Hogwarts Legacy situation? I doubt it. I don't think it's going to be quite that big. And then, they've canceled a Flash game. They've canceled a Constantine game. They're not willing to make a Superman game. I just have no clue what they're doing.
Well, and here's the other point is that so you're getting rid of Monolith, which really says a lot because what the problem that they have, going back to Marcel's point, is actually that they have too few studios and too few of games in development. What they should have done after Arkham Knight is, yes, make more Batman games. There's print money and fans love them. So they should have continued doing Batman games. This is one of the things that always frustrated me about the fans where they're saying, oh, we don't want any more Batman games. Batman, it's overdone Batman. It's like, really? We've had four games is all you can do. There's so many. There's dozens and dozens of rogues they haven't even touched that you can put in the game.
15 more Batman games. But
exactly.
I want those Superman games too. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's exactly my point. Is that yes, make more Batman, but also bring in Superman, Flash, Green Arrow, et cetera, et cetera. And so the problem is, you look at Marvel and they're executing perfectly. As we've seen, this is the part that's so frustrating about this. Goes broader with DC versus Marvel is. You see the contrast with, yes, I know Marvel is struggling a little bit right now in their movie division, and it's really hard to follow up Endgame, it turns out. So that's understandable and not surprising. But when you look at Marvel, I mean, they perfectly executed a cinematic universe with 25 most of them really good movies. The video games, they've got a whole Spider-Man trilogy. They've got a Wolverine game. They've got Marvel Rivals, a phenomenal shooter game. It's similar to Overwatch for those of you unfamiliar. I'm sure you guys all know, but it's a really, really good game. And I mean, that would DC doing the same thing, an Overwatch style shooter. I mean, that would be so good. On top of that, a Superman game and Batman and Flash and all these characters. And so getting rid of Monolith really says a lot that what they're viewing or sort of what they're trying to do is sort of cut costs, but also at the same point, of course, increase costs in some areas with the Batman stuff. And so I think what's going to happen is it's just going to be Batman 24/7, 365 from the gaming division. There's going to be Batman mobile games. There's kind of like we had between 2009 and 2016 kind of thing where we were getting, it wasn't just Batman Arkham, it was also, Arkham Underworld mobile game and this game and that game. And so, that's all fine and well. And of course, as a huge Batman Arkham fan, as we all are, I support that. But at the same point, what are you doing with the rest of the IPs? And getting rid of Monolith, it signals that, okay, Monolith, they could have done Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, any of these games. And W Montreal, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like a dick, but like, they've made one good game, and it's Batman Arkham Origins. Don't you think maybe you have them take another, go back to the old well here and do Arkham Origins 2? That would be my thought of what to do with them. Game of Thrones, it could work. Like Jake said, I mean, it's not 2015. I mean, Game of Thrones game in 2015 would have fucking slaughtered, but it's kind of old news.
What pisses me off about the WB situation, the WB Montreal situation, and is that it wasn't even their fault that the Flash game got canceled. It was Andy Muschietti and Ezra Miller who bombed the Flash movie, who essentially killed the Flash game and any potential chance of them doing anything with the character, because Andy Muschietti's over here saying nobody even cares about the Flash. The women don't care about the Flash. Bro, they made a whole CW series about this. Women don't care about the Flash. I'm sorry. We got the wrong people over there at WB who are making these types of decisions. It's insane. We needed that Flash game, honestly. That's the one.
Wait, Andy Muschietti said that about the Flash, that women don't care about the Flash?
He said
that CW show had a huge female audience. That CW show had a huge female audience.
Iris West was like the most popular character on that whole show for a reason. It's just bonkers that he said that had like no female. But that's what he said. Yeah, he said that the female audience is a character because he talked to a couple people in his personal life that didn't like the Flash. And he said that, he knew that this movie was going to bomb. Because
that's code for I made a trash movie and I'm going to blame women. Like, wait, that doesn't make any sense at all.
But back to the point of like the WB Montreal situation is that the Flash game, I don't understand the correlation between bombing a movie and not making a game, because the Flash game, they could have easily done that and done something at least remotely different from Arkham and done something at least interesting with like gameplay. I don't know. There's something that they could have done with the Flash, and the fact that they completely scratched that because of is the stupidest decision that I've ever heard of from a company. Like, what are you talking about, bro? Are you just never going to use the Flash ever again?
Well, by that logic, genuinely, they should have not made Hogwarts Legacy, because those Fantastic Beasts movies were not doing great at the box office, not getting great reviews. I mean,
they're not good movies.
Yeah, they should. Well, yeah, but people just aren't interested in the Harry Potter IP. Like that's if
Right,
they're
right.
this logic, that's what they should have taken away from that. Is people don't like Harry Potter. We're gonna just cancel the Harry or Hogwarts Legacy, and then boom, they're out $1 billion game. If the Flash had
even
looked really cool, I mean, there's
further with
no
that, Jake, I'm sorry, bro, but like the
yeah,
Suicide Squad, they had 2 bomb movies before the game even came out. I mean,
yeah.
okay. To be fair, Suicide Squad, the first one made like $700 million, but critically, that was the first no, the BVS was critically panned too, and so was Man of Steel. They were all critically panned. That was the third. I'm sorry, that was the third DCEU movie that was like critically panned and hated on by a lot of the critics, and they still greenlit the Suicide Squad game. And then James Gunn's movie came out, only made like $100 million at the box office. They still were rolling that game out, saying, yeah, let's go ahead and push the Suicide Squad even more. Like, what is this bombing and then canceling a game thing if they're going to freaking release Suicide Squad of all games and not the Flash? Like, what? Oh, man.
Well, so I
yeah.
don't know if you heard, but apparently part of the reason to cancel the Wonder Woman game was because she was in Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad, the game, bombed. And so therefore a Wonder Woman game wouldn't work.
You're kidding. They actually said that?
Yeah, that was part of their reason for canceling it. It's like the reason people didn't like Suicide Squad wasn't because Wonder Woman was in the game. It was because you were trying to sell a multiplayer live service looter shooter game to fans of single player narrative driven games. And so what do? They cancel the single player narrative driven game in development because they think there's a correlation there.
Here's the thing with WB leadership is they're just trend riders. This is the whole point I was saying all along is like this WB Games CEO who's now out, as of a few months ago. His whole thing is just, Fortnite, make money, do Fortnite. Like that was his level of analysis is like, just do the looter shooters because that's what's making money. Oh, Warzone, let's do Warzone. I mean, he's so shockingly stupid. And this is what happens. Like these guys, I mean, it's not that they're dumb people. I mean, they probably have, advanced degrees from Ivy League schools. So, I mean, it's not that they're completely stupid, but at the same point, you're bringing in people who don't really know anything about video games or the comics or just anything. And they just only know business numbers. And so they're looking at, riding these trends. And so the same is true with the movies, which here is an interesting point, which raises this question to me is David Zaslav's whole plan is just make Batman games and that's it. But the question is, what happens if the James Gunn universe actually does well? Like Superman's going to come out in a few months. We're getting real close to that movie. What if that movie comes out and makes $1 billion? That's where it gets really interesting is that I think we do have a chance to get a Superman game, but it all depends on this DCU, which is why this is a whole separate rant, but I'm going to go there, which is why these Snyder cultists need to shut the fuck up and stop being crybabies on Twitter. Because we need these movies to do well. And why do you not want the movies to be good? Please answer that question. Why do you want the movie to suck? And they're looking at, this footage looks bad. They'll compare like one shot to another shot and they'll be like, the real Superman versus the fake one. It's like, bro, the movie's not even out yet. I mean, like John Campea just did a podcast episode where he said he's hearing from people that it's a phenomenal movie and really, really good. And I think it will be, personally. And more importantly than that, I want it to be successful because if Superman comes out and makes $800 million, $900 million, all of a sudden the money's going to appear for a AAA Superman game. Would you look at that? Oh, there's this money. Oh, maybe we can make a Superman game. That's what's interesting is that the strategy that David Zaslav has, it's just based on, okay, nothing makes money except for Harry Potter and Batman, so just do that. But what happens if Superman comes out and makes $1 billion? Then this whole thing changes. And then all of a sudden the money appears to make a Superman game. And then we're really in business as DC Games fans, which is why it all comes down to Superman. And we all need to root for WB to make an ungodly amount of money this summer on Superman.
I think, look, I've already predicted that. I think it is going to, I don't think Fantastic Four, honestly, with the recent release of Captain America Winter Soldier, I think people are just tired of Marvel. Like even like it's making good money, but I think people really want to see like Superman. Like they want to see like the MCU Supermans, essentially, is what people want to see. And I think that they're getting that with James Gunn. And I think that people are hyped outside of the Snyder bubble that doesn't really matter. They're just a small, loud crowd on Twitter that gets their voice out like a lot of the times, unfortunately, because they have accounts that, there's a bunch of people that could call out essentially that are really behind the anti-gun movement. And it's really bizarre because I don't know. I feel like any real fan would actually look at this movie and be hyped about it. It's almost like not being hyped about the Batman, in my opinion. Like, why wouldn't you be hyped about what the Batman did? Like, anybody that doesn't like the Batman in some degree, I think has something wrong with their brain. You know what I mean? So for Superman, I feel like we're getting the same treatment with him from James Gunn, and I think that will be a success. And I really do hope that does lead to a Superman game. But WB, you know them, bro. You know them.
Yeah, dude. But and I do know them. And what I know about them is that they are just total trend riders, and all they do is follow the money. That's it. So if Superman makes money, they're going to want to make a Superman game to make more money. If it doesn't make money, their conclusion, like Jake is saying, if something doesn't work, their conclusion is the character sucks and we should never use anything with them ever again. That's how brain dead they are. But if it makes money, they're like, oh, Superman, make money, more Superman. Like that's literally all they do. And they never look in the mirror and say, was our product good? Was Suicide Squad to the Justice League good? It's just, oh, Wonder Woman in Suicide Squad game. Wonder Woman bad. Cancel Wonder Woman. It's like he's literally like fucking Bizarro is like their level of like logic in terms of making these decisions. So I feel again, dude, we all gotta hope and pray. Please make $1 billion. Please.
It's gonna take the Dark Knight level of
it will. It needs to make 800 million minimum.
I think that it's going to do that. Honestly, I don't really see this movie. Like, they just got to market it the next 3 months, the next 4 months, and really push the shit out of this movie. But I really see them doing that. Like, they literally have the marketing guy from the MCU, from Disney, essentially. And, considering that most of their former movies were making bank, I mean, shit, they could probably do it again. And I don't know. I really just want a Superman game already. I wanted that Wonder Woman game is what I wanted. We got blue ball, dog, is what happened, which is the saddest part, is that we'll never ever know what that Wonder Woman game feels or looks like or even like how hard could that have been to release that shit? I mean, it could have, even if it wasn't even that good, man. We would have ate that shit up 100%.
I cannot believe that there wasn't even a conversation of like, how do we make this the Miles Morales version of this? Like, how do we, like, okay, this isn't working on the scale we want it to. How do we make a game that's 7 hours long that we can charge people $45 for, that, still encapsulates a lot of the things people like about the character, but we almost advertise it like, kind of the same way Miles Morales was a glorified Spider-Man 2018 DLC. How do we almost advertise this like a glorified Arkham Knight DLC? Like, it has the free flow combat.
My question, Jake, I want to ask you, who do you think like chose to reboot it? Do you think it was the developers that were like, we can't make this shit work? Like, we can't make the Nemesis system work. We can't make her fly like throughout the mascara. We can't do this. Or do you think it was WB that looked at that and was like, we don't like that, reboot what you're doing into something else? Like, how do you think that situation went over there? Because I feel like as game developers, they wanted to get this shit out. Like, they wanted to get it actually done, but they maybe just got sidetracked by a stupid fucking developing or a stupid leadership executive team that didn't really know what they were doing or didn't understand what they were doing. What do you think was going on there?
If I had to guess, I would say it's the same stuff that was happening at WB Montreal, where WB Montreal is like, hey, we want to do a Constantine game. And they're like, sounds cool. And then they just leave them on red. And then a few months later,
it's like, no, they gave them $50 million to make it. Yeah. And they were like, wait a minute, we don't like this shit.
Yeah. And then it's like, hey, could we maybe update Gotham Knights and add new villain missions? And no, the game didn't sell well enough. Let's not improve the legacy of that game. How about you guys do the Flash? And then the Flash bombs, and then the executives say no. I think it was the same thing. I think it was like, we don't know about the direction this game is going. And it's interesting because the buzz surrounding it was, yeah, the game was in terrible shape, but a lot of the people who were working on it were like, it was looking really good. I mean, Gail Simone was a consultant on the game's story, and she talked about how incredible the game looked. So, yeah, no, I think for sure it was an executive decision to reboot it. Who knows? Maybe they were trying to make it live service or something. Like, it's insane. But also, kind of to Kobe's point about how Superman needs to be a huge success in order for a Superman game to be made. I think that's true, but unfortunately, the irony is that the reason Batman is at the level of popularity, and especially the popularity he was at in like 2016, is that they were doing everything consecutively. You know, Batman Begins was not a huge hit, but when The Dark Knight was coming out, there was better word of mouth, and you had the Arkham games coming out, and then you had the Lego Batman games coming out. Like, there was a huge cultural phenomenon because of how much was being produced for the character. And I mean, even doing something as simple, because obviously you're not going to make a Superman game in 3 months, but like, why not take 3 cult classic Superman games and like port them to the PS5 and Series X? Like, some of these decisions that seem so basic, or like, you know, make an Arkham Origins remaster. That'd be low budget, but people have been asking for it for a decade. Like, yeah, I just think that the decision making has been terrible.
Yeah, it honestly does lie on James Gunn, but based off of their plans and the fact that, you know, even though Creatures Commando apparently didn't like do as well in terms of viewership, that's still greenlit for a second season. Like, this DCU kind of seems like they're already locked in no matter what happens with Superman. I mean, it's very interesting. There's going to be 2 timelines that branch off. The one where this does good and the one that this does fucking horrible. If it does in between, like, okay, that's okay, right? It breaks even or it does a little bit better than even, okay. But if it does really bad, like everything that they were banking on, what the fuck happens then? That's a very interesting question. If it does great, we already know what happens, right? Everything kind of falls into place. We're getting a Batman movie. We're getting hopefully a Wonder Woman movie. And hopefully we get games that follow on top of that. James Gunn has already said that they wanted to intertwine the games into the DCU, which I think would be very interesting. Like, what if we got a year 1 and 2 of the DCU James Gunn Superman in a video game form, where it's not like a literal adaptation or like a video game tie-in, but it's more like you're basically telling the story of James Gunn Superman in video game form for the first 2 years before the movie. I think that would be actually interesting. I don't think that that's something that can be, you could kind of like restrict that to canon, but at the same time, you can still tell an interesting story by doing something like that. So they could do something like that where they're intertwining the DCU and still telling very meaningful and interesting stories within this universe, but still doing it in video game form. And I honestly wouldn't be upset with that. We have a Batman that already has Damian Wayne and apparently all the other Robins. Why not make a Batman game where he's basically in his early years, a lot like how Kevin Conroy did in the Batman Arkham games, or I'm sorry, like how Roger Craig Smith did in Batman Arkham Origins, or like how, of course, we saw it for the first 8 years of Batman's career in Arkham Asylum. That'll be all very interesting. So there's a lot that they could do if this movie is a success for Superman alone, like for the whole DC universe. But yeah, like Kobe said, it kind of does hinge on Superman. I really am interested to see what happens for the Superman movie, and I'm willing to go watch it at least 100 times to make sure it's a success, so that we can actually get a goddamn Superman game.
Right. And so at least the one thing that WB is looking at correctly is that there is a lot more story to be told with Batman video games, because look at it from even the villain perspective. I mean, you've utilized Hugo Strange, Joker, Scarecrow, Jason Todd, I guess, as a villain. You've utilized Deathstroke, but not to an extent that you can't use him again. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's and of course you've utilized Mr. Freeze. There's other villains that have been used, but my point is like, okay, Joker, yeah, he's dead. You can't please don't bring him back anymore. You keep bringing him, he's done. But you even look at Mr. Freeze. Yeah, he is in City of Night, but not that much that you can't utilize him again. And of course, there's many other villains that you haven't, Prometheus, et cetera, that have not been utilized at all. So there's plenty more games to make. I'm also, by the way, a big proponent of a soft reboot of sorts in the Arkham games, similar to what they've done with Call of Duty with Modern Warfare and redoing Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3, where they're new stories, but it's similar characters and a similar sort of take on the franchise, but in a distinct way. I'm a huge proponent of that because I think it allows us to you could remake Batman Arkham Asylum, but without it being like the exact same game. You know what I'm saying? You can expand it, make it larger, make the map larger, add more villains, add more complexity to the plot, et cetera, et cetera. Because, you know, if you were to just re-release Arkham Asylum today as like a remaster, of course it would be great, but the scope and scale of it would feel you know, it's very Metroid Transylvania kind of limited in scope as opposed to the modern games. I also agree with Jake's general point that games are becoming too bloated these days. But of course, if you were to redo Arkham Asylum, you would expand it. You'd make it a little bigger. You add more to the map. Maybe you're able to go to Gotham and come back. Maybe you're able to you know, the asylum's just larger with more villains, more side characters, add in Robin, add in Batgirl, et cetera, et cetera. That would be really, really intriguing. And of course, still make Joker the main villain, because that's the thing is WB, again, being so money oriented, which I'm interested, by the way, if their take from Joker 2 is that nobody likes the Joker anymore, that would be hilarious, but probably not. I don't think they're that stupid. They know that the Joker is like the most intriguing villain ever made in entertainment history. But I think with the Batman Arkham games, you can either do a soft reboot or fill in the holes that haven't been filled out. But again, I think they're going to want to use Joker, which would lend to a soft reboot of sorts, similar to what they did with Modern Warfare, which I would be a huge fan of.
I think that works perfectly, a soft reboot. I'm honestly thinking that they should just take the opportunity to, well, they kind of already tried to do the whole marketing thing when Kai Cenat was doing his little marathon thing of the Arkham universe. And that always kind of like leads people's eyes into certain games like that. And if WB was smart, they would obviously go ahead and make Arkham Origins a remaster of that, considering he said that that was his favorite like version of the Arkham game. So I don't know. They need to look at people like that. They need to do things like that where they're going and trying to fast trend kind of things like the Arkham Origins remaster. Because if they did an Arkham Origins remaster for the PS5, the Xbox One, and the PC right now, I guarantee you that would probably sell as much, maybe half of like Arkham Knight. I think that in this current environment with DC not doing shit, I honestly believe that Batman Arkham Origins being sold again as a remaster or just remaking or remastering or kind of like redoing the Arkham universe would be a fantastic idea. I honestly think that's what Rockstar is doing. They have no other option really. If they want to go the I don't even think they could go the prequel route at this point, because at this point they'll be stepping on Camouflage's toes with the Arkham VR version of Batman. So what else are they going to do? They might as well just make a whole brand new universe where it's completely clean slate. They don't have to worry about Camouflage doing their Arkham Origins sequel, whatever the hell they're doing over there. And then they can do their own thing with a regular Batman Arkham game. I think that that's the best option. I also think that WB needs to stop working on a Game of Thrones game. Like, what the hell? Game of Thrones, bro? What?
Yeah,
it's so. What are they even doing? What are they doing right now with Game of Thrones? Like House of Cards or House of whatever that. That's Kevin Spacey. What is it? What is the new House of Dragons? Is what it's called, right?
And it's not doing that well.
Who the hell cares about House of Dragons, dog? The season 8 of Game of Thrones was so dog water that at this point, their whole reputation for Game of Thrones is out of the window. And Telltale has already tried a Game of Thrones game. So get that out of why? Why are we doing this? Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, but you know what studio I think could have maybe made an interesting Game of Thrones game that maybe introduces a new procedurally generating gameplay mechanic with
Monolith?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monolith, the ones that made Shadow of War. That's a genius idea. That's way better.
That's actually a really good idea.
WB Montreal should have been making Wonder Woman, and Game of Thrones should have been the Monolith. Oh my god!
But imagine,
that's so true.
Imagine going to work and looking at the schedule, and your boss is like, "Oh yeah, we don't have you scheduled for the next 3 weeks," and you're like, "Okay." And then you show up to work 3 weeks later when you're back on the schedule and they're like, you haven't been coming into work. We're going to fire you. I mean, that's basically what's happened to all of these monolith developers. I hate that prospect of, or that thought where, these people have all been working their butts off to try and make a good game. But you have Warner Brothers who for 3 years just wasted money on letting them make a game that they knew they were never going to ship. Because after Shadow of War, Warner Brothers told them, yeah, you guys can make an original IP. And they kind of ran with that for 3 years. That's the amount of time it takes to make some whole games. And then they canceled it and said, no, you guys have to do Wonder Woman. So, I mean, at this point, Warner Brothers Games Montreal should be halfway through development on a new game after Gotham Knights. Instead, they haven't even started one.
Because if this was 2012, man, we would have already gotten Wonder Woman and Game of Thrones from both WB Montreal and Monolith, and it would have been like 8 hours and fucking fantastic. And now we're in 2025. We get these announcements and we get these rumors about games that are potentially coming, and it never happens. It's actually it's sad. We don't even know if we're ever going to get like that Venom game from Insomniac or like the Wolverine game, for crying out loud. I mean, that's like sad. At least we're getting like Black Panther and Captain America and stuff like that from Marvel. But for crying out loud, for them to announce this just to do absolutely like that's how is it not like the most insane thing ever? I feel like I could sue. They mismarketed me. I feel I'm emotionally entitled to some type of compensation. I didn't even buy the game and I feel like I got robbed. How the hell did that happen?
Well, I think part of the problem is that every game is trying to like win the jackpot that just isn't that like, it's not this industry that's as lucrative as a lot of these executives think it is. So what they'll do is they'll spend like $300-400 million on a game that isn't going to make that much money back. When you look at Batman, for example, making a game for like $100 million with medium-sized AAA development team, that makes sense. I personally probably wouldn't try to make a Batman game on the scale of GTA. Like, I think it would be cool. I'd love if they did something like that, but I don't know that it would make the returns that they think it would. And that's kind of my point. Like, we don't need every game to be a 70-hour long, 20 square mile open world thing. Like, I'm fine with Arkham City or Arkham Origins sized games. And, if Wonder Woman maybe had been a little bit smaller scale and maybe not quite as ambitious, maybe it wouldn't have been, completely scrapped. Maybe they would have figured out a way to keep it going.
The rumors are they spent $100 million on the game before scrapping it, which kind of blows my mind. I mean, that's such an insane amount of money. And you're right, the games aren't as lucrative as you think because, yeah, $60 a pop. Okay, let's say the game finishes. Insomniac, it's been leaked. Their Marvel games cost about $200 million a pop, those Spider-Man games. And so it's like, yeah, $60, that's a lot of money for each customer to pay, but do 20 million divided by 60. Or not 20 million. Sorry, you know what I meant. 200 million. Divide that by 60. You need to sell a lot of games to break even, and you need to make that deal. And that's why they're all pushing for the DLC to make it for the money, which I understand that. And one of the GTA execs I saw made a post that game should be charged by the hour instead of a one-time fee, which is crazy if we go in that direction, which is not unlikely. I could see game devs going in that direction. But
that's not even fair. My Marvel Rivals on my PlayStation 5 has 265 hours on it. I don't have that many hours on the game. It just says that I have that much on my PlayStation. So am I going to get charged for 265 hours?
Who do you mean, by the way? Who do you mean?
Penny Parker. Penny Parker, Mantis, and Spider-Man, bro. I'm a wicked Spider-Man. I'm just letting you know. Hey, I'm Diamond 1. I'm Diamond 1.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm getting it. But what was that?
Imagine pausing your game for like, and you accidentally leave it just sitting there because you get a phone call or something.
That's what happens. Yeah,
like $27.
Yeah, like $30 for like an hour.
They just like drain your bank account. They just like take all the money out.
That's what I mean, though. Like, that would be insane. I would never. But GTA, honestly, for Grand Theft Auto, like, they would probably be like trillionaires at that point if that happened. Grand Theft Auto, I feel like, is the exception to the rule because they can spend as much money on those games now as possible, just based off of what happened in Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5 with their online and their whole game.
Oh, it was obscene.
Like, made $2 billion or something like that, and they spent like 400 million or 500. It was like the most expensive game ever made or something like that. Whatever the case, it made billions. I mean, it's still probably making billions.
It is.
And their
It's
next game
money.
Their next game is still gonna probably make billions. It's probably making billions now, and they're not even releasing it.
Dude, I mean, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 10 years ago, the one 10 years ago, made $1 billion in the first week. Like, for a long time, this has been such a huge industry that makes such an insane amount of money.
Didn't Grand Theft Auto 5 do that in like 3 days or something like that?
Oh, I'm sure it did. I mean, that was way bigger than Modern Warfare 3 10 years ago.
Exactly.
For sure.
So everybody wants to be Grand Theft Auto 5 without doing Grand Theft Auto 5 work. There's a reason why Rockstar takes 8 years or like 7 years and takes this whole. There's memes. Yeah, this thing happened before Grand Theft Auto 6's release. That's a whole ass meme, and that's why people love their games. Is because there's that intricate detail. They take their time to actually make the online, rather it's fun or chaotic or whatever. They actually make it long, except for Red Dead Redemption 2. They fucked up on that one. And overall, like for Grand Theft Auto 5, if every game was like Grand Theft Auto 5, I think everybody would be burnt out real fucking fast, in my opinion. Which is the beauty of small games and why like indie games work and why all these 7-hour games. Wonder Woman doesn't need to be the scale of Grand Theft Auto 5. You know what I mean? Like Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad doesn't need to be the size of Grand Theft Auto 5. Like we don't need.
You know what's crazy too?
That much in there.
Batman Arkham City was developed in under 2 years, sub 2 years, like a year and 9 months. And so,
people, by the way,
under what?
Under 100 people.
Under 100. Whoa. Okay, so think about that. Like the best superhero game ever made was made with 100 people in under 2 years. And so it's interesting to look at it where with the movies, we get like one movie a year, maybe two. If you had games of that scale, you could just pump out games these 6 to 10 hour games that each take 2 to 3 years to develop. You could be like Call of Duty on an alternating. And when I say like Call of Duty, I'm not talking about the loot boxes, David Zasloff. I'm talking about the release cycle where they have 3 dev studios. They each take 3 years each. At least that was the old model that they used to do. 3 different dev studios. Each one takes 3 years. And then you get 1 game per year. The consumer gets 1 game per year. Why can't you do that? Why can't you have 3 studios each make 1 game per 3 years? But no, we're going to, and that's such a great point you made, Salvo, about the scope of the games, that if you're going to make a GTA game, you have to do the work. And here's the problem is that W Montreal took the same amount of time as Grand Theft Auto did to make all their games, but the quality was nothing even approximating it. And that's because they had development troubles and all of this and that. But that's what I'm saying is that you wouldn't have all these issues of it's like, why do you need to have 4? Why do you need 4 playable characters? What's the point of that? Why are you trying to build it as a games as a service game? Just make a 7-8 hour story, and then you cycle in Wonder Woman, Flash, and then you could make trilogies with all of them. You could make a Superman game trilogy like Arkham. You could make a Flash game trilogy. You could make a Batman game trilogy. Maybe you just pick 3 characters and alternate them every year in a 3 dev cycle. Maybe you just pick Flash. I think you just do Flash, Batman, Superman. And you make one of Rocksteady's the Batman dev. You have one studio that does Superman.
They can do all of the characters. They can do they could do Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, and Wonder Woman. Have 5 different developers and give them all 5 years to make their games.
Right.
Really.
But now they can't do it because they're closing all the studios and getting rid of them. But this is my point, is that it all comes back to this DCU, because if the DCU crushes, then they're going to feel like, oh, just kidding, we actually do need to make these games. But if it doesn't do well, they're going to say, our only IP in this DC catalog that's worth anything is Batman, so just don't do anything with it. But if this Green Lantern show comes out, it does super well. All of a sudden, we're going to want a Green Lantern game. Superman movie. If it makes $1 billion, oh, we need a Superman games trilogy now. Let's have,
you know what I think? You know what I think would be easier than just all of this stuff happening. You know what I mean? I think it would be a lot better if we just all went back to college for business. You know what I mean? We all got really deep into business. We all became executives at the ripe age of fucking 70, right? When all these stupid ass old executives are, and then we give the fans what they really want. Because this is almost impossible at this point to find a solution for these stupid people that don't know what they're doing over there at WB Monster or WB at all. I mean, the fact that they already fired some guy at the head of the gaming development, and they're already making stupid decisions like shutting down Monolith and stuff like that. Like, who is even the head over there? Who's even the top guy?
And to be fair, they shut down Monolith because the CEO of DC Game or WB Games, who's in charge of DC Games, he basically tanked the whole business unit. I mean, he destroyed it. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights. Both of them bombed.
Right.
And so then you're in this huge deficit. And then so when you're in the red, then it's like, okay, well, if we just fire everybody, that gets us closer to break even, And so I understand that from a business perspective. And that's David Zaslav's whole plan is like, oh, we don't have to pay taxes if we have all these tax write-offs and just don't release movies and whatever. But this is I just can't stress how important it is that the DCU does well. And by the way, we need it as comic book fans because the MCU, look, it's not that good anymore. Can we just be honest? The MCU is not that good anymore. I'm not saying it never will be. I'm not saying that the leaks that we just saw for the upcoming Avengers movie don't look badass. They do. And I'm very confident the Russo brothers are gonna do great. But let's just be real. It's not going to reach the same peak that it had. Like you're not, I mean, Infinity War and Endgame was something to behold. There was nothing quite like that. And they're not going to get back to that. And so what does that mean? It's time for DC to do their own thing. And this is when I was going on this rant, which I shouldn't have done. But I was getting all fired up because all these fans think Thanos is an original character and he's a Marvel character. And it's like, no. If you know the history of it, Darkseid was created. And guess who was created 1 year later? Thanos, who's the same fucking character. And there's many such instances of this. And so it's not nothing against Marvel. I love Marvel. Of course, we all love Marvel. But it's a little bit frustrating that there's going to be some DC characters that come out like Green Arrow, and it's going to be like, oh, this is just a Hawkeye ripoff. No. It's the other way around. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, you can't even do like a comedic like Hawkeye now because everybody's, or I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Like, oh, wait, that's MCU Hawkeye now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, no, you've got to go back to the comic books and you will realize that actually Green Arrow is the OG.
90%, yeah, like 90% of the DC characters are actually like originated first
Correct.
before any of the Marvel characters. It's really funny when you look back at like all the history of all those characters.
Correct. And so that's why I think that, of course, I'm going to watch all the MCU movies and I'm interested in what they do, but it's like DC in a certain sense, they can start from ground zero and finally build this thing the right way in a way that, let's be honest, Zack Snyder wasn't able to do. He was not able to do that. And let's give him credit that he made don't give him
credit. Zack Snyder wanted Bruce Wayne to impregnate Lois Lane and they wanted Brad Pitt to be up the alleyway. I didn't want none of that garbage. Get that out of here. Fuck Zack Snyder and all of his fans. What, you want me to go on a rant?
Oh my gosh. Okay, but I'm a big BVS. Are you not a BVS fan?
Marcel? I love BB. What'd you say?
I said, are you not a BVS fan? I'm a BVS fan.
Look, I love Man of Steel because that was like I was like 12 years old when that came out, right? I went to the movies and I was like, Mom, I love Superman. Can we go watch? Can we go get a comic? I got the Earth 1 Superman comic. It was pretty similar, like the vibe for Man of Steel and the Earth 1 Superman. So I'm not gonna lie, Man of Steel, loved it. My mom was covering her ears for most of the third act, but I loved it. You know what I mean? BVS, I use that for like motivation when I work out. That's a pretty good movie. I like it. I like it. Even Zack Snyder's Justice League, I like it. But realistically, that's like it's like an Elseworld story that I like. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah,
something
I
that I
agree.
want to
I
see
agree.
for the mainline like universe for Superman and Batman. I don't want to see Batman killing dozens of people
I
in the
agree.
universe. I just don't. That's not something that I want. I
And
want to
this
see
is
a
my
good Batman.
point, is let's be honest, like, yes, Zack Snyder did some good things, but he didn't have he was trying to build this whole universe, but he doesn't have he didn't have the vision to execute it. He didn't have the ability to execute it in the same way Kevin Feige did. And now we have our version of Kevin Feige. Is James Gunn as good as Kevin Feige? I don't know. We'll have to see. That's the whole point of doing a universe, is we're about to find out. But
I will say that for that's a good comparison. I will say that he's already, for the DCU's beginning, he's already more in the limelight than than Kevin Feige was. I don't think Kevin Feige was really in the limelight until like, I would say like 2012. You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of people really knew about Kevin Feige for a minute, but yeah, nowadays people are like more critical about what he says, and I feel like more people don't so far. So like right now, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because he says some questionable things. James Gunn definitely says some questionable things about the canon about the DCU, but I hope that he's actually as good when Superman comes out. I feel like we just have to wait for the movies.
Well, I agree. That's actually the biggest thing is, and actually I think it's good that James Gunn is a little more front and center for this, because a lot of his projects I don't think would necessarily get tons of publicity otherwise. Like, you're starting a new DC like phase 1. And even for me, a big fan of the comics and some of the more obscure characters, I'd be like, okay, we're doing a Flash movie, then a Superman movie, then a Batman movie. He's going like, we're doing Superman, and we have Creature Commandos as a TV series that's animated that ties in. And then we're going to do The Authority. And then we're going to do Peacemaker season 2 that's like kind of canon, but kind of not. And like, unless everything is really high quality, I don't know. Like, if this was something where it was a lesser known producer pulling it all together, I think people would just be confused and not have the investment. So I almost think like
If this was anyone else saying any of the things that he was saying, I don't think anybody would be excited for what's happening. And
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing about James Gunn. I think that's a good thing about James Gunn, because he's able to go from Guardians of the Galaxy, which was, I guess you could call it like a raunchy comedy family movie, which I don't even know how that's even possible. You know what I mean? Like, the first like 15 minutes of Guardians of the Galaxy, they make a masturbation joke. Like, bro, how the hell did the fucking thing even succeed? Anyway, what I'm saying is, how the hell did that go from Superman and then all of these other projects? James Gunn is somehow able to he's able to become uncanceled from making very incredibly sensitive jokes, and then being, I don't know what James Gunn, what magic he has or whatever, but he's definitely making it happen. And I honestly am very confident for I think Superman's going to do good. Like, this is right up his alley. If he does the family-friendly Guardians of the Galaxy 3 type vibes, where it's all like something like that, I think that this is going to be like the most perfect Superman movie. No one can deny it in that point. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we're in a weird crossroads where I think we're all optimistic about this DCU cinematic universe, but it remains to be seen. I mean, for all we know, Superman could come out and have a great opening weekend and then have like a 75% drop off and get very middling reviews. And then boom, James Gunn's out and the, all DC movies are put on hold and we're back.
And then no. They're going to do Andy Muschietti as the head.
Look, there is so many moving parts in this universe. That's true. But I also look at it as, I agree with some of the TV shows, but I also am kind of the opinion the TV shows don't matter. Like, even, by the way, in the MCU, the TV shows didn't really matter. Yeah, there's like, oh, Daredevil is in whatever, this movie, that movie. But it's kind of like, you don't have to watch any of the shows to understand the MCU completely. And I kind of think it's the same thing here where, yeah, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, they kind of don't matter. Like, it kind of doesn't. It's really like Superman, Batman, Brave and the Bold, like, what's going on with that? That's what everyone's eyes are going to be on that. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Jake, but it's also kind of like there are these weird sort of side passion projects that kind of don't matter a whole lot in terms of how they perform.
I agree there, because I think that with Creatures Commando, there's only like one character that we know of that's really going to make an appearance, and that's like Rick Flag's dad or whatever. And that might have some canonical like connection to Creatures Commando and the Suicide Squad and Amanda Waller and stuff like that. And then of course you have, like you were saying, Peacemaker. That's a little bit more confusing because they're I hate it because it gives the Snyder fans something to complain about, because this is technically still the DCEU cast in the DCU, and they have something to cry about. But at the same time, it's James Gunn's creation. So it's like they can't really say much about it. But at the same time, Peacemaker, like, is he going to fight Darkseid? Probably not. Like, do we really care about his side character? No, we care about Batman and Damian Wayne and Superman and Green and the Lanterns. I think the Lanterns is probably where they're going to start making it a little bit more in the even though they say they want that to be kind of off to the side of the DCU and be its own thing. I still think that the Lanterns TV show, it's in the DCU, I think my microphone just came out. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Something just happened. But that Lantern show is set in the DCU, and even though they said that it's not really like somewhat needed in the DCU, I still think it's going to establish a bit of a tone for like the Lanterns and stuff like that, because Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart are the main Lanterns, and then you have already Guy Gardner in the Superman movie. So you already have 3 Lanterns in this universe that we've already seen. I think that's actually pretty cool in my opinion. But overall, the TV shows, you're right, most of them probably don't matter. I think that, again, like they even said with the Lantern show, that's going to be kind of separate from the DCU, and you won't need to know the characters, the lore, or what's happening in the DCU movies to understand what's happening in those TV shows, and vice versa. So that's actually a really good thing. But also, in the long term, I think that many people might criticize that for being very unconnected. But that's also what happens in the comics too. Like, there's a lot of things in the comics that happen that aren't connected, that are very uncanonical, and shit happens all the time that's like not even a reference in the future. So I kind of hope that they kind of go into that more obscure, chaotic type of canonical version of the comic world, instead of like sticking to a very canonical. They're just like, yeah, this happened, and now this guy's here. Like Hal Jordan might like get shot in the head or something, and then he comes back for the Justice League movie. Who the fuck cares? You know?
Yeah, no, and I'm actually like, there's a lot of projects that they have in development that are more obscure ones, like Mike Flanagan doing Clayface. That's like gonna be super cool. I'm really excited for that. But at the same point, like, my expectations for the box office of that one aren't super high. But and that's what I'm kind of saying and alluding to, is that I think James Gunn is the guy to pull this off. I think for anyone else, this would be a train wreck, because it's just like, tons of moving parts. And there are some things where, if I were at the helm, I would probably be doing things differently. Like, you have the Suicide Squad from James Gunn that he's like, I kind of want to keep it canon, but it's also like, I want to change things in the future. And, I think that's a little confusing, but it's not going to be a big deal breaker. If they recast Harley Quinn, for example, I don't think that's going to destroy everyone's perception of the reality of this.
I think what he said was it was like they considered like Suicide Squad like I think it was like a distant memory, or like some type of like a foggy memory or something like that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense if you're telling it within the perspective of Peacemaker. And then if you're doing that, then of course you can recast anybody as Harley Quinn or Deadshot or I mean, I guess King Shark, whoever the fuck wants to be King Shark. But you know what I mean? That's a good excuse to kind of like blare out or blur out a lot of the DCEU's canonical events that might have happened. Like Captain Boomerang. Maybe Captain Boomerang, he, instead of getting chopped up by a chopper blade, exploded and he flew off 100 yards into the ocean and survived. Like, yeah, that's a blurry memory that people had. Maybe that'd be cool to see. So Captain Boomerang's back. But if they continue to do the Suicide Squad canonical version, that motherfucker's dead and he can never fight the Flash. Like, what are we gonna do then? That's kind of boring. You know what I mean? For like a Flash movie, if they want to do the Rogues. So yeah, I like where James Gunn's kind of taking that with Peacemaker, and honestly, overall, Peacemaker's already a joke of a character technically within the DCEU. So if they're going to continue, if they're going to continue to do that, like literally, you have Ezra Miller's Flash saying that Aquaman fucks fish. Guys, are we really taking Peacemaker serious? Is people going to be mad about Peacemaker? Probably not. So if they do something like that with the like Superman, like if Jesse Eisenberg comes back and is like, I'm really Lex Luthor, and then like, what the fuck's going on here? What the hell? Like, okay, I'm confused. Like, I would get confused there. But overall, I think James Gunn is the right guy to kind of like make those decisions. And you're right. Like, he is the perfect out of everybody. He's seen the behind the scenes of the MCU. He knows exactly where things need to be and what needs to happen to make a successful, a successful movie universe. And with this, I think that he's actually going to take a lot of what he saw with Kevin Feige, what he did, and apply it into the DCU, which is actually kind of exciting. Like, that's actually a really good thing to see somebody who had that experience and to be at the helm of something that's very important to a lot of people. So I think that he's going to do a great job. So overall, man, WB is stupid, but at least they got James Gunn for the movies. Like, I think that that's a good thing. That's the only good thing they got going for them. They need us for the games is what they need.
Dude, I've made an offer. I've said, James Gunn, Warner Brothers, talk to me. Let's get going. Like, I'm with both of you. I want to see a Superman game desperately. I want to see Flash.
I feel like we would green light all these games and actually give them to developers that matter. Like, even earlier, you were like, Monolith gets Game of Thrones and WB gets Wonder Woman. Like, why wasn't that something like that's the easiest decision in the world? And somehow WB as executives fucked that up. They couldn't give WB Montreal a game for 9 years. That's sad. Yeah. That's literally GTA time. That's insane.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy. They definitely need to figure out what they want to do with the games beyond just like these 4 major franchises. Because as Kobe has said, what happens when Superman and Wonder Woman are billion-dollar franchises in the movies? You're going to be too little too late with the games, because now we're just suddenly green lighting a Wonder Woman game that's 5 years out, rather than having one that can kind of coincide with the films that are releasing. So I don't know. Maybe they need to start looking at licensing stuff out more. Maybe they need to start talking to some smaller developers who can have faster turnarounds. I've been playing the Mass Effect games for the first time recently. And for anyone who hasn't played those, basically they play out like Telltale games where like you have a dialogue tree and a somewhat branched narrative. And it's about like you get to build your crew and it's a sci-fi, so you take your crew on missions and you have to gain their loyalty, and characters can be killed off if you make the wrong choice. Like, imagine doing a Batman Beyond game like that. Like, imagine doing a game where you're rebuilding the Bat family years after Bruce Wayne has put down the mantle, and maybe it's not the biggest open world Gotham we've ever seen. Maybe it's somewhat smaller, but it looks really cool and futuristic. Like, maybe the main campaign is only 7 or 8 hours long, but it's a really damn good campaign that has a really good story. Like, I'm just of the opinion that we need to get back to making these games based on the characters. I mean, Arkham Asylum is a very small game by today's standards, but it still holds up very well and is a fan favorite because it captured the spirit of playing as that character. And that's what we need to go back to. I don't need everything to be a 60-hour long RPG. I don't need everything to take 30 years to develop. I don't need everything to be live service. I mean, the Arkham games, all 4 of them were developed in the span of, I think, 10 years, under 10 years.
I would say 8 years. From 2008 or 2009 is when Arkham Asylum came out, and then 2015 is when Arkham Knight came out. So that's actually 6 years, technically speaking. Only 6 years.
The release span of the Arkham games was less time than it took to develop Suicide Squad. So, yeah, we got to get back to making games that make sense. The Arkham games, in a weird way, kind of were live service because it was like, I did pay for a new campaign and version of the game every 2 years. It was just in the form of a new release. So I think we need to get back to doing that. Also, one thing I'll leave off on my thoughts on this is recently Ubisoft made a smaller scale Assassin's Creed game. They made Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was like probably a fourth of the size of their traditional releases these days. And they said the game actually sold about as well as their huge RPG counterparts. So I don't know why these studios keep insisting on chasing a trend that isn't even making more money than just going back to what fans have been asking for anyway. So I don't know. We need to see more games that encapsulate these characters' abilities. And I think Warner Brothers needs to stop being so embarrassed by their IPs. They need to start really trying to sell them. Like, yeah, Flash isn't super popular right now. Well, maybe you make a movie with a less problematic actor and you find a director who's better suited for the material, and then you see what happens. And you do it with a game that has really cool gameplay to coincide with it.
That's a very good point. Like, honestly, I would love to see like a Green Lantern game where they take like a No Man's Land style of, or No Man's Sky style of like, gameplay development where you're bouncing from like galaxy to galaxy and you're going and defending people from like space attacks from like the Manhunters and other like alien threats. Like, how hard would that be to develop, or like to ask the people that made No Man's Sky to make a Green Lantern game in the same vein as No Man's Sky, where you're bouncing from universe to universe as a Green Lantern and saving people from different like threats in the universe? Would that not be cool as shit? Make it everlasting so you just have infinite like freaking side missions. That'd be cool. Superman as well. You can make like a 12-hour Superman game where you're in Metropolis. That's a great point, where you can make these characters and make these games to their abilities. Like, Batman doesn't need a Grand Theft Auto style game. They don't need a Gotham Knights style game. They really don't. Like, that's the last thing that they need, where they need to be a huge open world. And no, they need to be more compact because these characters can't fly super fast. They can't obviously get to point A to point B very fast. So they need to be in a smaller, tighter environment. Same thing with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman could have worked so well if they just had Themyscira as a map and you're flying around and protecting Themyscirians or whatever the hell they're called and doing shit like that. Like, how hard could that have been? But Jake, you make a very great point. I don't understand why they're not doing this. Obviously, Marvel's doing this. They're making the Iron Man game. They're making the Black Panther game. They're making a Black Panther and Captain America game. They have Marvel Rivals. They have all these different genres, all these different developers. They're even remaking, or not remaking, but they're at least putting the Avengers back into development. The game that bombed, one of the worst, video games of all time for superheroes, the Avengers, is still being developed by another team somewhere. And they're not giving up hope on that game. So the fact that they're able to do that, and WB is scared to make a Flash game or a Wonder Woman game, it's just downright pathetic. There's something wrong with all of their brains. Everybody who is collective hive mind over at WB needs to be snuffed out and fired immediately, because there's something wrong with each and every single person that is making a decision over at the gaming head at WB. They need to stop immediately.
Totally agree. I mean, we just need to start infusing these characters with more popular stuff. Like, I think Batman needs to fight Skibbity Toilet in the next game.
That's what all the kids are talking about these days.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, on that note, thank you for sending us out on a fiery note, Marcel, as you always do. That was wonderful. I appreciate that. Couldn't agree more. Any other final thoughts that we have?
I don't think so.
Make Kobe the WB executive and make us his assistants, and we would make the greatest WB DC games of all time, period.
We can be co-CEOs, It's like David, just like with James Gunn and his finance buddy.
You could take all of the name blame that David Zaslav does, bro. I'm not gonna be.
I see. Nothing. So you want me to be the bad guy and take all the heat? I see. No, I'm just fucking.
You could take it better than me, that's for sure, bro. I'd be calling everybody out. They start calling out my name.
That's like, true. That's true. We got to keep you behind the scenes. Okay, guys, appreciate you all for tuning in. We'll be back very shortly when there's more news to discuss. Any episode topics that you have or would like to see us chat about, please let us know. Of course, some Superman stuff will be coming out very shortly, and hopefully the Batman 2 news, perhaps, or Batman Brave and the Bold. We'll just see what happens, and we will chat with you all very soon. Thank you guys for watching. See you all in the next episode.